The plane shuddered slightly. Donald Trump, still wearing his Make America Great Again hat, stepped into the first-class cabin, but this time their reception was not what he expected. "Excuse me, Mr. Musk." Trump froze. Musk, the man he had mocked just yesterday. Was Elon Musk refused service because of his hat? Trump returned the next day and did something noon saw coming. Los Angeles International Airport gleamed under the fluorescent lights, a maze of hurried footsteps and hushed conversations. Passengers streamed toward their gate, suitcases trailing behind them. Like obedient shadows, Flight 317 to Tokyo, Narita was set to depart soon. In the first-class lounge was a parade of tailored suits, expensive watches, and the quiet confidence of those accustomed to luxury. And yet, amid all the wealth and power, Donald Trump stood out. A navy blue suit, crisp and tailored, a signature red tie, bold as ever. But what truly captured attention, what made people pause mid-sentence and glance, was their baseball capper, ched atop his head, "Make America Great Again." As Donald Trump strode toward the first-class boarding area, atmosphere shifted, conversations dipped in volume. Some passengers turned away, feigning disinterest. Others exchanged quiet murmurs, side-eyeing. The infamous flight attendant stepped forward, her posture polished, her voice composed. "Miss Trump, welcome aboard." She smiled, professionally polite. But Trump caught it, the hesitation fleeting but unmistakable in her eyes. Her gaze flickered toward his cap, a quick glance, a barely perceptible pause, and then a tight-lipped smile. "Would you care for a glass of champagne before takeoff?" Sir, a harmless question asked. Endured first-class courtesy, but Trump noticed something. His eye scanned the room. Crystal glasses shimmered in the hands of other first-class passengers, filled with golden, bubbling liquid. Every other VIP was already sipping their drink, every other VIP except them. A faint smile flickered across Donald Trump's face. "I take it there's none left for me," the flight attendant hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "I'm sorry, sir, we've just run out of champagne, but I can bring you some water if you'd like." Trump arched an eyebrow. "Water? You sure about that?" The attendant didn't answer. She simply smiled, a tight practice smile, and quickly walked away. A few seats away, a businessman in a sleek charcoal suit, shaking his head. Well, he muttered, nudging his companion. "Guess Evan Trump gets turned down sometimes." Trump didn't need to hear it to know what had just happened. First-class cabin. Donald Trump stepped inside, indifferent to whether anyone acknowledged his presence or not. Seat 2A, his space for the next 12 hours. He shrugged off his jacket, draping it over the seat. With ease, noon could make him feel like he didn't belong here. His gaze drifted toward Zeet. Too empty. Good. A long flight was best enjoyed with some personal space, but just a few minutes later a man arrived, quietly settling into the seat beside him. No suit, naughty, no polished dress shoes, just a plain hood, faded jeans, and a pair of worn-out sneakers, a stark contrast to Donald Trump. The man pulled his baseball cap, low, obscuring most of his face. Trump raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "Evening." The man's voice was calm and usually steady. "Yeah, evening." Trump responded curtly, barely glancing up as he pulled out his phone and tapped out a post on Truth Social. The engines roared to life as the plane began its ascent. Donald Trump noticed something strange. The man beside him, there was something oddly familiar about him, probably another startup guy, some tech bro trying to change the world. Trump dismissed the thought and leaned back into his seat. A flight attendant walked past a silver tray glinting under the cabin lights. "Would you like some champagne?" Sir Donald Trump nodded, flashing the easy smile of a man accustomed to the finest things in life and for youth. Sir, the man beside him shook his head. "Just water, water." Trump arched an eyebrow, lowering his voice, just enough to be heard. He muttered, "Water, huh? You sure you're in the right cabin? Might be more suited to economy class." The man didn't react, just a faint, almost imperceptible smile like a breeze passing through. And somehow that bothered Trump more than an argument would have. What he didn't know was this flight was about to deliver a shock he never saw coming. Trump leaned back in his seat, taking his low sip of champagne, savoring the luxury of first class, but the quiet didn't last long. The man in suddenly spoke. "What do you do?" His voice was calm. "Ventu." Even Trump set this glass down in with mild curiosity. "You don't recognize meth?" The man tilted his head slightly, his cap still shielding most of his face. "I don't follow the news much." Trump laughed, a stranger who didn't care who he was. Unbelievable. "All right, then what do you do?" The man, still scrolling through his phone, replied with a single indifferent word. Tech. Trump's grin widened. "Oh well, we've got plenty to talk about then." Donald Trump leaned back, flashing a knowing grin. "I've done great things for this industry. Now who's got real talent and who just got lucky?" The manga of a small nod but said nothing. His eye stayed on his phone. Trump wasn't used to being ignored. Curiosity twisted into irritation. He took another sip of champagne, his voice rising slightly loud enough to catch the attention of nearby passengers. "You know, the tech world is full of people who get way too much credit for half-baked ideas." A few heads stirred, but the man in tube remained unmoved. Take Elon Musk, for example. This time the man's finger paused mid-scroll just for a fraction of a second. "And that Silence only fueled Trump's amusement. They call him a genius, but they forget just how reckless he's, no reaction, and who throws billions at rockets that explode and calls it the future still not thing. Trump smirked. He wasn't done. Tesla overhyped. Twitter don't even get me started on that. Disaster is off. Chuckle escaped from 2B. Trump froze. The man still didn't look up, but for the first time a faint smile hosted across his lips, as if he had just heard something amusing, and that irritated Trump more than anything else's. So Trump challenged, leaning in slightly. Tell me, was I wrong? Hemmon shook his head, his voice a steady no. I just think you're quite passionate. Donald Trump narrowed his eyes. Passionate, I call it. Trialistic people like Miles just ride the media wave, nothing more. A few passengers stole glances. Trump mistook their curiosity for agreement. But the man in tube remained unfazed. Well, everyone's entitled to an opinion. Trump's coughed. Opinions are just opinions, but facts don't change. Miles is just a PR guy who got lucky. People like Muriel innovators were the ones actually building the future. The man simplies. Miled a small, knowing smile, and then without a word, he turned back to his phone. Trump smirked to another clueless dreamer, but what Donald Trump failed to realize that the man's silence wasn't ignorance, it was restraint. Passengers seized into their seats, some reading, some watching movies, some sipping cocktails, but Donald Trump couldn't relax. Frustration simmered beneath the surface. The man beside him wasn't bidding, no reaction, no counter-argument, just the occasional amused smurf. It was infuriating. Finally, Trump had enough. Let me guess, Donald Trump's idle, landing in slightly. You're one of those startup guys, right? AI, crypto, something trendy like that. Seems like everyone's jumping on those bandwagons these days. The man finally looked up. His expression remained unreadable. Note exactly the vague response only irritated Trump more. All right, then what do you think about Musk? Trump's voices harpened. If you're in techie, you must have an opinion. The man paused, then shrugged. He's done some interesting things. Trump burst into laughter. Interesting things, he repeated, like he had just uttered the most ridiculous understatement of the century. That's the nicest way I've ever heard someone say. Overrated. His voice grew louder, as if inviting an audience to his performance. That guy is a total fraud, preaching about saving the planet while flying around in private jets, screaming about colonizing Mars, while ignoring the problems right here on Earth. For the first time, a flicker of something crossed the man's face. Amusement, annoyance, but just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. Trump ordered his steak medium rare with a glass of red wine. Dinner was served as she cut into his steak. Trump stole at the man beside him. The guy ate with a patience that almost felt deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. Must be nis. Trump muttered under his breath, not loud enough to be confrontational, but just enough for the man to hearth. The man flicked his eyes toward Trump for a brief second. Then, without a word, he turned to his meal. No reaction, no explanation. And that indifference, that complete, unshakable calm made Trump uneasy. The first-class cabin settled into a quiet lull, passengers reading, watching movies, sipping wine. But Trump couldn't relax. He had spent years reading people dissecting their weaknesses, exposing their vulnerabilities. Yet this manga gave him nothing, no frustration, no irritation, no need to prove a point. And then Trump noticed something. The flight attendants, they didn't just serve the man in two. Like any other passenger, they glanced at him and else's, something between respect and curiosity. One attendant even leaned in slightly, her voice hushed, almost deferential. If you need anythings, or please don't hesitate to ask. Trump frozes, or Trump frowned, head adjusted his seat casually, or so it seemed. In reality, he was sneaking a closer look, the dim lighting casts of shadows keeping the man's face mostly hidden beneath Ibrahimoff his baseball cap, but there was something strangely familiar. The sharp angles of his jaw, the effortless way he occupied the space, commanding, yet without needing to announce himself. A strange unease crept into Trump's mind. Could it be Nanawe? He inhaled deeply, shaking the thought away. Just another eccentric rich guy, he muttered to himself. Yet the feeling didn't fade. And then the man tilted, his head slightly, casting a sidelong glance at Trump, not aggressive, not overtly interested, but cold, calculated, knowing as if he already knew exactly what was coming next. And in that moment, Donald Trump unknowingly stepped into a situation he never could have predicted. The first-class cabin drifted into an elegant silence. The quiet clink of windglasses, the soft rustle of blankets, the occasional loud chuckle from a movie screen. But Trump wasn't sleeping. Note Van close, a few cocktails in his mind, hummed with restless energy. His gaze drifted across the cabin, searching for something, anything, to distract himself. And then his eyes landed back on seat 2B. That man. Trump raised an eyebrow. All right, he muttered. I give up. The man. I didn't look up. Who are you? The man turned a page in his book, his voice effortlessly calm. I'm just someone in the tech industry. Donald Trump smirked. Well, looks like we have something in common. Let me guess, you're some venture capitalist or maybe 8 Rust Fund kid playing entrepreneur this time. The man chuckled softly, but his eyes never left the page close enough. Trump frowned. Oh, come on. You can't just sit here acting all mysterious for the first time. The man lifted his head and their eyes. Trump froze at those eyes too familiar. His mind raced trying to place them, trying to connect the dots. But before he could speak, a flight attendant approached her voices, suddenly more formal than before. "Excuse me, Miss Musk." The air seemed to vanish from the cabin. "The captain wanted to inform you that your connection in Tokyo has been arranged. They'll be ready for you upon landing." Trump went frigid. Musk. The first-class cabin fell into silence. The man sitting next to him was none other than Elon Musk. His mind replayed every word he had spoken throughout the flight, every mockery, every insult, every dismissive jab at SpaceX, Tesla, Twitter, all of it. Right in front of Elon Musk, Trump opened his mouth, but for the first time in a long time, he had nothing to say. Elon Musk gave his light nod to the flight attendant. "Thank you." His voice was calm, steady, completely devoid of anger or offense, as if none of this had ever been important to him. But for Donald Trump, there was no ignoring it all around them. The other first-class passengers who had been pretending not to eavesdrop for the past few hours were now exchanging glances. Some looked intrigued, others amused. A few even smirked like they had just witnessed H's game where the loser never even realized he had lost. Trump swallowed hard for the first time on this flight. Had now words. Elon Musk adjusted his cape and turned back to his book as if nothing had happened, as if the entire conversation had been nothing more than idle chatter. But Trump knew better. Everything had changed. Trump still couldn't quite process what had just unfolded. His eyes bore into the man and to be trying to reconcile the reality in front of him. "Oh, Elon Musk." Musk closed his book, setting it down gently. "That's what they tell me." His voice was light, tinged with just a trace of humor. Trump's face burned. "He didn't mean anything by what I said earlier, just, making conversation. You can't take these things personally." Elon Musk tilted his head, his expression unreadable. A faint smile flickered across his lips. "Don't worry. I don't take it personally." Elon Musk's voice was smooth, almost effortless, but the air in the first-class cabin had turned so heavy it could have been sliced with a knife. Trump grabbed his wine glass, downing it in one long gulp as if the alcohol might wash away the humiliation spreading through him, but Musk completely unfazed. "And somehow that made it worse. You must be used to criticism by now, right?" Trump's voice was forced, straining for casualness, but there was tension laced between every word. Musk leaned back in his seat, gazed, distant perhaps. "But I've always believed if criticism is constructive, it has value." Had turned to Trump, locking eyes with him in your beat of silence. "Was it constructive?" Trump froze. "You mean I didn't know I was talking to you?" Musk chuckled softly, but his voice remained calm. "Too calm, man. Does that matter? If something is true, it remains true, no matter who you're saying it to." Trump was speechless, but Musk wasn't finished. "You mentioned Tesla." His voice was quiet, but it landed like a hammer. "Do you know how many lives or driver assistance technology has saved? How many accidents have been prevented because of the features we've developed?" Trump suddenly felt like his seat was shrinking beneath him. I guess." Elon Musk's gaze remained cold, unwavering. "And SpaceX, you called it reckless." Musk said, his voice a steady, razor sharp. "But do you know? We've reduced the cost of access to space by over 90%. That we're developing technology that could one day protect humanity from extinction-level events." Trump opened his mouth, but now words came out, because what Musk had just said carried more weight than any argument. Trump had ever made. Musk continued this time, his voice quieter, but somehow even heavier. "And Twitter, yes, it's chaotic, but sometimes chaos is necessary for change. Ideas evolve through friction. Without it, there is no progress." The first-class cabin fell silent. Noon interrupted. Noon dared. Trump swallowed hard, struggling to find his footing, and then Musk delivered the final blow. "Next time, think before you speak." It wasn't said harshly, but it cut deeper than any insult Trump had ever received. He stiffened, then slowly leaned back in his seat for the first time in a long time. Donald Trump felt small eyes drifted toward the windows, staring at the endless sky, beyond every mockery, every dismissal, every sneer about SpaceX, Tesla, Twitter. All of it replayed in his mind like a slow-motion film, and for the first time he felt regret. Meanwhile, Elon Musk simply returned to his book as if nothing had happened. Musk didn't argue, didn't try to prove a point, and somehow that made Trump respect him even more every now and then. A flight attendant would quietly approach Elon Musk, her posture discreetly respectful. Now Trump finally understood why passengers reclined their seats, wrapped themselves in blankets, but Trump couldn't sleep. His mind wouldn't let him. Finally he shifted, lowered his voice, and murmured, "Hey Musk." Elon Musk looked up. His expression was calm, but his focus was sharp. Trump took a deep breath. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. And for the first time in a long time, actually meant it. I was out of line." Trump admitted, "It's easy to criticize, but carrying the kind of responsibility you can't even imagine." Musk studied him for a moment, then with a simple nod he said, "Apology accepted. No need for dramatics, no need for anything more." The plane began its descent. The lights of Tokyo burned bright as they approached the runway. Trump stared out the window, with thoughts tangled. He had spent his entire career shaping the world in his image. But how many people like Elon Musk, visionaries, risk-takers, had he missed along the way? How many times had he assumed he knew everything, while others took on the challenges the world refused to face? Touchdown, asked the plane at taxied to the gate. Passengers stirred from their seats, gathering their belongings. Trump stole a glance at Elon Musk, still composed, still unshaken, as if the entire conversation had never even happened. And then, just before stepping out of the cabin, Musk turned back, a final look. Good luck with your work, he said, a small smile, no judgment, no condescension. Hope it makes a difference. And then he was gone. Trump watched as Elon Musk disappeared into the crowd, flanked by silent airport staff, all ready on his way to his next mission. He stood there watching, and for the first time in years, something unfamiliar stirred inside him: humility. The plane had landed, passengers filtered out carrying their luggage and their own stories. But Trump couldn't leave like an ordinary man, because he was no longer the same man who had boarded this flight. For years he had believed, understood the world. He had built this empire on absolute confidence, on the conviction that he knew how to run things better than anyone else. And then Elon Musk, and he had mocked, yet a man who with nothing but calm words and unshakable presence had completely changed the way Trump saw everything. Donald Trump took a deep breath, and then he stepped off the plane as the bright lights of Narita Airport came into view. A single thought settled in his mind: he could never go back to being the man he was before. What would you do in this situation if you were Trump? Or Musk, how would you react? Share your thoughts. If the story made you think, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thank you so much for your continued support of the channel. We truly appreciate each and every one of you during the content creation process. There may have been some small mistakes, and we hope you'll kindly overlook them. Wishing everyone happiness, peace, and good health in life. Stay tuned for more. Disclaimer: this story is purely fictional. It is based on hypothetical scenarios and is not associated with any individual or organization. All events meant in this video are intended to provide a diverse perspective and have been edited with AI assistance. If there are any inaccuracies, we appreciate your understanding. Wishing you luck, success, and an enjoyable experience.